Primordial Protocol.
Pressure makes diamonds, but it can break them too. The right amount of pressure is how a mind gets stronger. The wrong amount, or the wrong kind, is how it breaks. Learning to tell them apart may be the most useful skill there is. There are two things people love to say about pressure, and they contradict each other. The first, pressure makes diamonds. Push a person hard enough, and they'll harden into something brilliant and unbreakable. The second, quieter one. Stress is killing you, so protect your peace, lighten your load, avoid what hurts. What the hell? Isn't this stressing itself? Both are half right, which is the most dangerous kind of wrong. Because pressure is neither your friend nor your foe. It's a dose. The right amount, applied the right way, is exactly how a mind grows stronger. Too much, or the wrong kind, and the same pressure that could have built you starts to break you instead. And most of us were never taught where that line is. If that sounds familiar, it's because you've already met the physical version of this idea. Here's why this is worth your attention before we get anywhere near the science. You are going to face pressure. That part isn't optional, not in any life worth living. The only real question is whether it makes you or breaks you, and the surprising, freeing answer is that this is partly up to you. Pressure isn't only something that happens to you. It's something you can learn to read, calibrate, and use. That matters because both of the stories you've been handed will fail you. Follow avoid stress at all costs, and you get a life optimized for comfort, and a mind that grows thin and brittle, that panics at the first real demand, that never finds out what it's capable of. Follow embrace the grind. More is always better, and you burn out, break down, and call it discipline. Neither one is strength. Strength is knowing the dose. Balance is the key. In everything. And here's the part nobody selling you either story wants to admit. Almost everything you actually want sits on the far side of some pressure you can't skip. Confidence is built by doing hard things, not avoiding them. Resilience is the residue of getting through difficulty, not comfort. Mastery, courage, the quiet sense that you can handle what life throws at you, none of it is available in the shallow end. You cannot become capable without being tested. So the goal was never to escape pressure. It's to get good at it. That's the why. Now the how. A quick word on why I'm the one telling you this. I've spent my working life as a survival instructor and a mental coach, and my actual job, the thing people pay me for, is teaching them to stay functional when the pressure is real and the stakes are high. I've also written 2 books on survival and the psychology of performing under stress. If there's one pattern I've watched play out over and over, in the field and on the page, it's this one. If you read my piece on hormesis, you already know the shape of what's coming. In the body, a moderate, recoverable dose of stress, a hard workout, a cold plunge, a stretch of hunger, triggers an adaptation that leaves you stronger. Too little and you weaken. Too much and you injure yourself. The mind runs on the same curve. Psychologists have a 100-year-old sketch of it. In 1908, 2 Harvard researchers, Robert Yerkes and John Dodson, ran experiments on mice and noticed that a little pressure improved performance, but past a certain point more pressure made it worse. Draw it and you get an upside-down U. Performance climbing as pressure rises, peaking, then falling off a cliff. A bit of pressure sharpens you, the deadline that finally gets you moving, the audience that makes you rise to the occasion. Too much floods you, and everything you knew how to do deserts you. Hold on to that picture, but hold it loosely, because, as we'll see, it's more of a useful metaphor than an exact law, and the interesting part is what it leaves out. Here's the first thing the simple curve misses. The very same pressure can land as fuel or as poison depending on one thing: what you believe it's doing to you. In 2013, the Stanford psychologist Alia Crum and her colleagues showed employees at a large firm in the middle of a brutal financial downturn a few short videos. One group watched clips framing stress as debilitating. It wears you down, makes you sick, wrecks your performance. The other group watched clips framing that same stress as enhancing. It sharpens focus, fuels growth, is your body rising to meet a challenge. Nothing about their actual workload changed. Only the story they carried about it did. And the group that came to see stress as enhancing reported better well-being and performance, and even showed a healthier, more moderate hormonal response under pressure. The effects here are real but moderate, and it isn't magic. You can't simply decide a genuinely crushing situation is fine and float through it. But it's a real crack in the naive story. The dose matters, yes. And the same dose is transformed by whether you read it as a threat that's happening to you, or a challenge you're rising to meet. Pressure you interpret as, I'm being tested, and I can grow from this, does something different inside you than pressure you interpret as, I'm being damaged. And now the deepest factor, the one that separates the pressure that builds from the pressure that breaks. Nearly 60 years ago, Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer found something grim. Animals given painful shocks they couldn't escape eventually stopped trying even later, when escape was easy and right there. They called it learned helplessness, and for decades the story was that the animals had learned they were helpless. Then, in 2016, after half a century of neuroscience, Meyer and Seligman published a striking correction. The original theory had it backward. Giving up in the face of prolonged, uncontrollable stress isn't learned at all. It's the brain's default, wired-in response. What actually gets learned is the opposite: control. When an animal discovers it can do something about the stressor, a circuit in the prefrontal cortex switches on, shuts down the collapse response, and, crucially, leaves it more resilient to stress in the future. Cool that they fixed that themselves. Sit with what that means. Two people can face the exact same intensity of pressure, and the one who can act on it, who has some handle, some agency, some way to push back, is strengthened by it, while the one who is trapped and powerless is slowly broken by it. Controllable pressure is the forge. Uncontrollable, unrelenting pressure is the thing that grinds diamonds down to dust. This is why toughen up, embrace the grind, is such careless advice. Pressure you can meet, act on, and recover from builds you. Pressure with no exit, no control, and no end in sight builds nothing. It just erodes. So let me be careful about what all this does and doesn't say, because the pressure is good for you genre turns dangerous fast. First, the curve. The Yerkes-Dodson inverted U is a useful picture, but it began as a study of mice and electric shocks in 1908, and the tidy optimal arousal law you'll see quoted online is a modern oversimplification. Real human performance is far messier and depends heavily on the person and the task. Treat it as a metaphor that captures something true: too little and too much both hurt. Not as a precise dial you can read off. Second, and more important, adversity is not a reliable strengthener, and anyone who tells you otherwise without qualification is lying to you. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, taken literally, is false. Severe, uncontrollable trauma frequently doesn't make people stronger. It leaves lasting damage, and post-traumatic stress is real and common. There is such a thing as growth through hardship, but the research on it is genuinely mixed, and some of the growth people report may be a story we tell ourselves to cope, more than a real change. Pressure works as a tool for growth in a specific zone: challenging, chosen, or meaningful, controllable, and recoverable. Push past that into the chronic and the crushing and the inescapable, and you're not forging a diamond. You're just doing damage. Which is the honest limit of the whole metaphor. Real diamonds form under enormous pressure across unimaginable spans of time, and they still shatter if you strike them wrong. You are not carbon. You need pressure and release, load and recovery, and you have a breaking point that deserves respect. So, where things actually stand. That both too little and too much pressure degrade you is a well-documented pattern. That control and recovery decide which way pressure cuts is strongly supported. That any given hard experience will make you stronger is not a law. It's a possibility, and it depends on the conditions. And your own optimal dose is an experiment only you can run, honestly, with rest built in. The move, as with the body, is not to go looking for more suffering. It's to court the right pressure and refuse the wrong kind. Choose challenges that stretch you and that you have some control over. The hard conversation, the ambitious project, the skill just past your current reach. That's the growth zone. Demanding, but yours to act on. Lean into that pressure on purpose, because avoiding all of it is its own slow harm. Then, deliberately recover. Growth happens in the release, not the squeeze, the same as muscle. A mind held under constant pressure with no recovery doesn't get tougher. It frays. Build in the off switch. Rest, sleep, disengagement, things that have nothing to do with the fight. Reframe where you honestly can. Before the hard thing, I'm being tested and I can grow here, isn't a lie you tell yourself. It's often the more accurate reading, and it changes what the pressure does to you. And find the meaning in it, because pressure in service of something you care about is bearable in a way that pointless pressure never is. But also, and this is the part grind culture never says, know when to reduce the pressure instead of adding to it. If a situation is chronic, uncontrollable, and wearing you down with no end in sight, the strong move isn't to endure harder. It's to change the situation, find some handle of control, or get out. That's not weakness. That's reading the dose correctly. Pressure was never the enemy. Unrelenting, uncontrollable, unrecoverable pressure is. The skill, maybe the whole skill, is telling one from the other. Your mind, like your body, was shaped by a world that pushed on it hard but rarely without pause. The pressure was part of what made us capable. The task now isn't to escape it, or to worship it, but to find your dose, and to rebuild the recovery a frictionless life quietly took away. Body, environment, mind. Oh, and one last thing. There's been a song humming in the back of my head since the very first line of this, and by now you can probably guess why. Bowie and Queen, 1981. Under Pressure. The books and the studies behind this piece are listed at the end of the written version if you want to go deeper. And if this way of seeing things resonated, subscribe. It's free, and it's the best way to catch the next one.